So I've listened to the record about, I don't know, 24 times right now.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's
you've
a
got
lot.
well, it's a good record. You've
Thank
done a
you.
great record.
Thank you. I'm
And I don't,
super proud of it.
yeah, I don't know that you've done a bad record.
Well, I've made some that were not as perhaps as accessible or tolerable as others. But this one I'm really proud of. I actually really like this record. It feels like my second record and my third record. It feels like early days.
Yeah. When did you know? I want to go back. I want to start with the last record, though. That was the Nashville record, the country album, whatever you want to. Did you always know that was going to be a one-off, or was there a point where you said, "I've done that. I don't need to do that again. It's not going to be a follow-up to that."
Well, you know what didn't suit me more than anything was the format, the country format. I had thought just from listening to the radio that probably the kind of music that I make was better suited for instead of a pop audience for a mainstream audience, which is what country music generally seems to attract. But I realize that that format is constructed so differently than what I'm used to at old school AAA pop
And
rock
it's a different
radio.
world.
It's a different world. They expect a lot of the artists there. You have to be accessible 24. I mean, radio programmers have your phone number and text you, and I'm just not that person. I spent a lot of time doing free gigs in hopes that they would play me between 3 and 4 a.m. So it just didn't feel right for me. So no matter what kind of record I made, that format was not going to be one I could succeed at because I couldn't be accessible like that. It's just I got kids, I have a life. I didn't want to be.
Right.
So
So that's when you get into this record. I mean, I know how the press takes a hook, and every album seems to you've got to have that press story and everything. But you do the Rolling Stone interview, and they're saying like, "Oh, this is her return to the roots. This is her '90s record again." And I'd like to say ahead of time that I guess I don't see that. I
Oh.
know you go back with an old producer, and you go back to something that's comfortable,
yeah.
but I didn't hear it that way. I heard this. I mean, you've got it. What's the title of the record?
Be
It's Be
Myself.
Myself. Like that is really what this to me is more about. Because you have the albums where, okay, I'm going to make the country album. I'm going to make the Memphis record. Like everything seems to have a theme that you're driving towards. And I don't know if you go into those records calling it that,
Yeah,
but
no,
this seems the
usually
opposite.
it's the record making process for me is kind of unknown, and then by the end of it I feel like where I wind up with all the songs leads me to the title. And I had loved the music coming out of Memphis, and I grew up very near there, and wanted to make that kind of record, but didn't really know exactly what it was going to be. So I had a lot of different records that have been kind of explorations of musical influences. But this record, my objective for it was just to go in and have a really fun time, like the old days where the studio was just like a laboratory slash sanctuary where the outside world, was subjected to being outside the locked door. And Jeff and I, my old songwriting buddy, who he and I wrote "Soak Up the Sun" and all, and "If It Makes You Happy" and "Every Day Is a Winding Road" and "Favorite Mistake," that it would just feel like the old days where we went in and he had a guitar and I had a bass and we threw up a drum groove and wrote a bunch of songs. And that's really that's how we made the old records, and it's how we made this one.
And that's it. It sounds really natural. And I guess
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting to. It doesn't seem like you're trying to get back to a
No, not
previous
at
decade,
all.
which of any art form, I mean, music is the only one that really, you can be a time traveler. Songs are the way to time travel.
I think artists typically try not to repeat themselves. They try not to get stuck in a rut. And as a writer, as a performer, as a producer, I've always tried to keep growing. But this one was more conscientiously, let's go back to the way we used to make our records, which was just Jeff and I and either a drummer or a drum groove, and demo it, demo the songs, and then the demos were what went up on the record.
Yeah. And I guess that also explains, because there is a lot of references in there beyond Be Myself, Long Way Home. And that's what I didn't know. Like, what exactly is home? Is it what you're talking about, just getting back to that easy songwriting, or is there something completely different when that's specific?
Yeah, that song, Long Way Home, is really about the journey that brings you to the moment of now. And I have been all over the world, and I've had an extremely full life. I've had cancer, I've adopted kids, I've had numerous wonderful, intense relationships, some that ended poorly and some that ended great but didn't last.
And very public.
And very public. Yeah, I mean, I've lived 9 lives, and my life has never been better than it is right now. And that's, I guess, ultimately, it's what you go through to get to this moment that is what that this song is about.
I mean, how is it working for you then? Are you still writing as much? Were there lots more songs beyond this? Because this record does sound so natural and almost like these songs were hand selected because they fit
Yeah.
each other so well.
There were a few songs left over, and we've I know they're using them for something, I don't know, but it was an easy record to make. I mean, granted, there were just so many things to write about. Creativity for me now exists between school drop off and dinner time. So that is basically how we worked. I dropped the kids off at school, went down to the barn, which is right at the down my driveway, and we would work until I'd pick up the kids at 3 and bring them back, and they would play in the barn, and then we'd walk up the hill and eat dinner at 6, and that was it. And it was great. It was very civilized, but nonetheless inspired.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, I hear songwriters all the time talking about, where the song just kind of arrives out of the ether, but it almost sounds like with this, it's, the punch in the clock, if it's not there, is it harder that, like, you've got to chisel a bit more? I don't know.
Yeah, well, in the old days, I would go in with absolutely no ideas, and it would take months to make a record, and it would just be like gnashing of teeth and banging my head. And this one wasn't like that. I think mainly because I hadn't worked with Jeff in a while, and we just fell into this thing that we always had. But the lyrics for me, I just felt like there were so many things to talk about, and I wasn't even conscious about, okay, I'm going to write a song about this, I'm going to write a song about that. I said earlier, I kind of barfed them out, but it was kind of like that. It was just like venting, kind of.
Yeah. And you can hear that too because there's several themes going on lyrically that you're talking about in this. I started looking at some of these songs and then some of your back catalog, and I found that you have this favorite thing to write about that seems like it's how you relate to others. Not that you're so much an outsider, but there's sort of an opposition, like, I don't know, that you feel like you don't fit in or something because, you call out the hipsters and the indie bands in this. I mean, is that accurate? Is that part of it?
Yeah, that goes all the way back to when I was a kid. I was always on the periphery of all the, of the cool group. I was always on the periphery of the great musicians. I was never quite there. Wasn't like one of the cool kids or wasn't the best musician or the best singer. And, but I also think there's a certain element to that exists in everyone where you feel like you're not fully one of something, And I also think that's a byproduct of being a songwriter, or maybe being a songwriter is a byproduct of that you feel like an outsider and you have something to say in the way of commentary or observation.
Well, how does it work for you? I mean, because when you came out, I mean, what year was Tuesday Night? That was
94.
Yeah, 93, 94. I thought there was a complete different musical landscape as to what was popular.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't playing what was popular. And
No, which was one of the reasons it was shocking that it did as well as it did, because it just didn't sound like anything else.
Right. Do you find trouble relating to whatever's going on right now? I mean, again, you dabble in the country world, and hot country is one of the biggest genres sales-wise out there. But, as you're talking about all the indie bands out there, I mean, do you find yourself, do you know where you are in the musical landscape?
Well, I don't know if I exist in the musical landscape anymore because hey, I'm an elder statesman, as I like to say. Yeah. I'm a seasoned artist. A lot of what's at radio that we listen to on the way to school is, it's really geared towards young kids between, what do they say? The demographic is 13 to 26 or whatever. I don't know that I'm going to find a home there. Yeah. The country format I found was, it's all male singers with the exception of maybe one or two women. And it's all about hot chicks in tight jeans and, so I knew I didn't fit in there. And, but there is a great world of music that exists, like in AAA, bands like Head in the Heart, Nikki Lane, Lake Street Dive. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm constantly Shazamming our local AAA and finding awesome new music. So hopefully, I'll find my own home there. You never know. And
one of our biggest artists on the format, Gary Clark Jr.
Gary Clark Jr.
Who ends up on your record.
He's on my record.
How did that happen?
Same manager as me. Yes.
That's convenient.
Yeah. I've known him since, the beginning. And a great kid, but also just a great hope in the way of of music, I think.
How did he end up on? I mean, beyond that, is it
I
just making
called
the
him.
call and?
Yeah, I actually texted him and said, "Hey, would you play on something?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." We've done stuff together live, so and I sent it to him.
Yeah, and it's just the one song.
Yeah, he sent me a bunch of options. I was like, "No, don't make me choose."
You can totally hear him on there. I mean, that tone. He has crafted that out so
He's
well for himself.
masterful.
Yeah.
He's really great, and he's the real deal. I really, really am a fan.
Yeah. Have you got anybody else on the record? I guess
Not on this
noteworthy that I
one.
would. Yeah.
No, not on this one. I mean, I've got a lot of great players.
I haven't
Fred
seen the liner notes.
Eltringham and my drummer's on it, Fred Eltringham, and Josh Grange plays pedal steel and some. I think he mainly plays that. That's about it. Yeah, mostly just me and Jeff.
And again, it sounds so full. But I guess that's maybe why it sounds so. I don't know. It is one complete sound over the whole thing. I mean, there's a few different things going on, but it works as an album. It's not a collection of singles. That's what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
at. That works. And I will say there is my favorite song in here. "Love Will Save the Day."
Oh,
Is that the name of it?
yes,
Yeah.
and actually that was an emotional afternoon for both Jeff and I, because Jeff had just moved to town just a few months before, and he's got a teenage boy and then a grade school boy, and they were getting acclimated to starting school, a new place, and then a friend of mine, or sort of a peripheral friend of all of ours, her son, who was 14, committed suicide at one of the Brentwood Academy. Just a good family. And it just struck all of us that it's a hard time in our evolution as people to be able to hold the chaos that is around us. But for kids, for children, sometimes it's just not holdable, and so that's what the song is about. It's just really a song of hopefully encouragement, and, just the promise of being loved and held.
I think we've all known someone or a family that's gone through that, and you just want to shake those kids and say, "You're so young."
I know.
And it all changes, and all of this
and
goes
sometimes
away.
for kids, they just can't handle it. The
Yeah.
pressures, and with social media and all that goes on around them in their own homes, it's it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to grow up.
Well, it did, unfortunately, I guess, bittersweetly make for this beautiful song that almost seems like the centerpiece of the record. I mean, there's the placement right there in the middle, too, but
Yeah.
it all, to me, builds up to that, and it's just rips your heart out. And then here's side two,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was an album, that's where it would be.
That's
The
it.
needle would come up after that one.
Next song on the list, though, Heartbeat Away. If there is something of you reclaiming some growl from, if it makes you happy, like hearing your fiery passion come out in that song.
Yeah, that was kind of a funny song because, we didn't set out to write like the epic "Give Me Shelter" cousin. We were writing and recording during the election cycle. Actually, even before the candidates before Donald Trump had gotten the nomination, and before Hillary had gotten it, and that song, it started out with this kind of sinister sounding groove and bass line, and I just started writing this kind of espionage song about the corruption that exists under our noses that we're not even aware of. And even Russia entered into the picture, and it was before anything came out about Russia,
Which is
and the
amazing
election.
that you were able to
very
call that,
eerie,
right.
super eerie. Yeah, so I listened to it, and people will think that was written after President Trump was elected, but it wasn't. It was written well before any rumblings of Russia interfering with our election, before that ever came about.
And that's the line. I mean, the heartbeat away. That's what you usually say about the vice president, like whoever that guy is the heartbeat away. But you've tied that in where, I mean, obviously calling out the president and calling out Russia, it's sort of like, okay, this is probably the political song. But I don't know, the way the poetry goes, it's like it's almost also a love song.
Yeah, and also that everything you need to know is just a heartbeat away.
Yeah.
If you look closely. So it's art is a cool thing. If you can tap into something that's just in the ether, you have to consider yourself super lucky. It doesn't happen that often.
Yeah. And by no means is this the first time you've tried this, because, you had to sing or the song "Woman in the White House."
Right.
Which was a really cool song. And everyone will usually in the bios bring up, guns and Walmarts.
Right.
This is,
Yeah.
but when you're going after this, I mean, you write great political songs. You want to write the political songs. As I see it, you're liberal in Nashville. You know, it's
I don't know. It's not, I mean, I don't set out to write songs that will piss off the conservative right, but I can't, I mean, it would be no way I could edit myself or I wouldn't
censor, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't censor myself. And there was just, I don't know, it was so prevalent, the fact that people were so vitriolic during this election cycle, so much so that I started a petition to try to limit the election cycle through change.org. I was very verbal about it. And I still stand behind that. I think that when it gets to be that length, the only people that benefit from an election cycle that long are advertisers, TV, news outlets. But it just was, we were swimming in it. And so it would have been really hard for me to just ignore that and not write about it or to even try to keep it from having a presence on the record.
You see the debate going back and forth sometimes, and I love it when an artist uses their platform for the. Do you think it's an artist's job to maybe not take a side, but and even just make sure you're reflecting what's going on out there?
Yeah, I don't think it's my job to do it. Well, that's not exactly
responsibility.
True. That's not even. You know what I will say? I think art is what catalogs us or documents our evolution throughout time. You can go all the way back to 1700s, and classical music defined a period of romantic songwriting from the Romance period, paintings, writings, Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald. You can go back and look at who we were as a people by looking at our art, all the way back to hieroglyphics. And although I don't consider it my responsibility, I do think that what art does is give a voice to the collective conscience, and a lot of what's out there is definitely representative of where we are right now, for better or for worse. The shrinking of the attention span, being down to 6 seconds and having to put a hook in every 6 seconds, and according to what makes a great pop song. Everything really does reveal who we are at a moment in time. And I want to write songs that I feel like are, that speak to us and about us, because that's what music does. It changes the molecules in all of us. And if you're having an experience where you are listening to something and you feel like it's resonating in you, that's what it does.
Yeah. And at the same time, you're going to write about your personal life and the romance and the love songs.
That's unavoidable. Yes.
And try to throw it into one big old pot and see what kind of stew is made.
Your life informs your art, and your perception is completely formed by your life experiences, so you can't avoid it.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be curious what I'm missing here. When we first started this conversation, you kind of half-jokingly said that there's a lot to say about this record. Like, what is there that you're needing to say about this record beyond?
That it's awesome and people should go out and download it or buy it or whatever it is people do now.
I feel like I just threw out a low-hanging fruit question there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one of the themes that runs all the way through the record is the presence of technology and what that's doing to our relationships with others. It connects us, and yet it is also creating a chasm between us. It's giving us the unadulterated right to speak our minds in a really super ugly way anonymously, but it's also giving us the ability to support each other. There's a song on there called Be Myself, which is the title track. And I think the objective of that song ultimately wound up being about my relationship with my kids and trying to figure out a way to help them understand that likes and dislikes on Instagrams or Facebook or whatever does not dictate whether you are popular or good. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're at right now. I can't imagine being a kid growing up with all this technology that is supposed to be telling you about you and who you are to yourself.
Yeah. You get that in roller skating too, which is a great line in there.
Yes, put your phone away, let's roller skate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. My kids all the time, Mom, put your phone away. And you're never going to look back and think, oh, I wish I would have spent more time on my phone.
No.
No,
it's crazy. And that was a sort of a fun point to listen to in the record, because I don't know, in a way you're sort of time stamping some of these songs because you're mentioning Instagram and you're mentioning Twitter, and I don't know, I can't name a song that actually said the word MySpace or something in it, but I'm sure when you hear that now it's going to be a giggle.
Yeah.
And in 15 years, hopefully, this vision that you're wanting of the future comes true, because I think we all need to get to that point that that you'll be able to look back and be like, that's silly.
And that's what it does. Art basically documents a moment in time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it does.
Well, it's a great record.
Thank you.
I love it, and it's another one in your fine catalog of many
Oh,
great records.
well, thank
so.
you. And Kyle, people in Radioland probably do not know that you and I are sitting in my hotel room.
Yeah.
So
It's clean. It's very clean.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, they
My
came in
hotel
and
room
they
is not this clean.
Although if you look around closely, there's like little boy underwear and PJs over there, and you know.
You've got your stowaways
it
too.
real.
Yeah, my son, he does the thing. He sneaks the doll into my suitcase, and so when I open up,
that's
yeah,
Ducky and Piggy over there. They've been all over the world.
awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, good to talk to you.
You too.